Has anyone ever asked you that question? What is God? The question actually popped into my mind, I don't know, sometime over the last couple of weeks. And you know how those mind poppers are, like some just come and go. And then this one was like one of those, pinball machine? I don't know, do they still exist? Do they? Okay. I don't get out at all. So like a little pinball, this question has just kept bouncing. And I thought, well, what better place to take the question than to my fellow spiritual travelers at UVC? So give that question a moment. What is God? Something, I am guessing, came to mind. An image, a thought, words, a feeling. So here's the deal. Going out on a limb this morning, and I'm asking if you are willing to join me there. And for the next several moments, suspend your belief. That image, that thought, that feeling. We're going to talk about possibilities this morning, possibilities that we could respond with to that question. Some or many of them may have already been a part of your consciousness. And the reason I ask you to suspend your beliefs is so that we can make space in consciousness for some new possibilities. And as I begin this message, let us all remember where I'm coming from is I do not believe there is one right answer. I don't know how many of us are in this room. Because I track numbers every week, I have a good guess of how many are in the room and how many are in the ethers. And usually we're pretty close to 250 or 300. So as we pose that question, what is God? I'm guessing we had a couple hundred options flare up in minds. So there's no one right answer. What image do we make of God? What are the terms, if we hear someone speaking of God, or if we're in a conversation with someone about God, what are the terms that we most commonly hear? And you really have to shout because my ears are on my nightstand at Erin's house. So if somebody can say something and then a shouter can share it, what are some terms that you commonly hear?
Love.
Mark?
Father.
Father. Thank you. What else?
Mother.
Mother.
Love.
Love. What else? Source. Oh my gosh, you guys have been around Unity a little bit. What else, Mark?
Abba.
Papa?
Papa and Abba. A-B. Abba.
Abba. Thank you, John.
Higher power. Higher power.
Higher power.
Oh, yes. And I'm sure there are many that we haven't named. And think back, for those of you who were in some sort of, religious or spiritual or church situation as you were growing up, think back to what that image was about. I can assure you that my image, God was a white guy. God had long white hair, long white beard, lived far beyond the clouds, way out of the vision of my human eye, and he watched over me daily. So part of that was reassuring, and the other part was, oh my God, he's got a notebook. And he's keeping track of my wrongdoing. And I was pretty sure that when I got old and kicked the bucket, that there would be a reckoning with my God, with a stern conversation about what was my penance to pay for those wrongdoings in order to get a slot in heaven. And I was pretty sure there was no guarantee to that. You know, I mean, 69 years, that wrongdoing list might be more than a page long. That scenario sound familiar to anyone else as a kid? God is watching you. So with these images, these thoughts firmly ingrained in our tender little brains, it can be quite difficult as a full-grown adult to let go of describing God as a gendered person, primarily male, or as a being or an entity. And the beauty of Unity teachings is that we are all given opportunities to evolve on our spiritual path, to evolve our relationship with the divine. And that is the primary reason that I've been around Unity for 40 plus years. So the first terms that I heard that came to mind, she, he, mother, father. How many of us grew up hearing people use this terminology, gender-based, human-based? How many of us used that language ourselves or heard people around us talking about God in that way? And you know what? The truth is, there's still a whole bunch of people that are really comfortable and really content with that image and that language. So numerous people are seeing God as a person, and we've also given God this male parent identity. Let us just be aware that that can be a really quick and really hot trigger for some people. So it's simply an awareness that our perception, our image of what is God can be very different than the person we're sitting next to. As fellow spiritual travelers, I believe that it's our job to respect another's beliefs while we are questioning and exploring our own. So some would say that this old school language perpetuates the old religion traditions. And I'm trying to think which author wrote this. I think it was Marcus Borg said that when we're in that boat, it's like we have one foot planted in traditional religion, and then at the same time we're trying to gain foothold of emerging spirituality. So has anybody here ever conjured up an image of God that looks like us? Looks like human? Are you familiar with the spiritual writer Annie Lamott? She is sacrilege. She's so spiritual and she's so brave the way she talks and the way she writes. And this is my very favorite Annie Lamott quote. We know that we have made God in our image and likeness when God hates all the same people we do. Yeah, it's funny and it's not. Because I'm seeing this perspective, viewpoint come alive over the last decade or so. There's quite a list for some folks of people that God shuns, doesn't like, abhors, and you can imagine what that list looks like. And I think over recent times that we have developed quite a chasm between the far-right religious groups and the moderate sector. And my viewpoint is we have also seriously intertwined religion with our politics, yes? And some would say religion has been weaponized. All right, I would say, in my view, religion has been weaponized. There's a New Thought writer named Marcus Borg, and one of the books that he wrote is called The God We Never Knew. And he wrote this: each of us has made an image of God. One looks at it and sees Allah, Buddha. Another sees Jehovah, Jesus, Krishna. Each has formed their very own concept of what God is. And he goes on to say, they worship and pray to that concept. We must stop making graven images in our mind. Must stop picturing what God is like. We must trust the unformed invisible which penetrates and interpenetrates all being. There's this wonderful book in Unity, Heart-Centered Metaphysics. The study of metaphysics is my favorite. I love studying it and I love living it. And we write in this Unity textbook, another Unity belief is that God is not a person or a divine entity. God is the I am. God is law, life, love, mind, oneness, principle, source, spirit, substance. And we'll talk about all of those names for God. So we say in Unity is not really accurate to refer to God with any of the usual pronouns. She, he, father, mother. And when we use these pronouns, that we are continuing the age-old anthropomorphizing of divine mind. And could I get a high five for pronouncing that correctly the first time? Because that's a stumble word for me. And I'm not going to say it again because I said it right the first time. Okay, so we've got the image. Let's put that on the shelf. Here's another rabbit hole. And you don't have to show your hands. Who among us believes that God is out there? Just see where you are with that. Who among us believes that God is something that dwells within us? Eric Butterworth, longtime Unity minister, now floating in the ethers, prolific writer, wrote a book called Practical Metaphysics. And he wrote, God is not a person out there. God is an allness. God is an allness in which we exist as eachness. Only in Unity can you put ness at the end of any word. And spell check hits it every time. So God is an allness, and we are the eachness that exists in God. We are the individualized expressions. And how beautiful is that? I don't know how many of us are there now, 8 billion plus? It's a frightening number. 8 billion plus individualized expressions of allness. Because again, the person that you're sitting beside, in front of, behind, does not express spirit in the way that you do. Which is very frustrating sometimes. But we are all individualized. And back to Borg, he describes it as God is the encompassing spirit. We are in God. We are in God. I would say it, we are of God. We are of spirit. We are of source. God is a non-material layer or level or dimension of reality all around us. And I was particularly pleased because Borg wrote, the God that I have met as an adult is the God I never knew growing up in a church. And isn't that good news? The God I have met as an adult. So back to heart-centered metaphysics. Let's step into a new lens when we look. I rattled off the list of and it's even hard what to call the list. The names, the aspects, the image, the essence of who God is. And that is, start with law. God as law. I don't know if anyone who's listening today has ever related to spirit as divine law. Knowing God as law is knowing that God is providing for the consistent and orderly outworking of divine ideas. Each and every one is the divine idea coming from source, coming from substance. Divine law can't be broken, and it works consistently. Here's the interesting news. We're always applying divine law. And if you go to Charles Fillmore, who co-founded Unity, he wrote this little kind of dictionary type book called Revealing Word, and look up law or divine law. There's pages of them. So we're always applying divine law, and our success in the outworking of it is dependent on the varying degrees of our awareness of it. Makes sense, right? We can only use it to the ability that we're aware of it. That's law. Life, I get really jazzed about. This is one of my hot buttons. God as life is the activity, the animation, the vigor of source, of substance, of life in every cell of our being, every level of consciousness. Life naturally expresses as wholeness and health. And I believe that God as life is the divine blueprint. I can always see an X-ray of it when I think of God as life. It's the lighted up divine blueprint of wholeness and perfection, out of which we co-created ourselves. And here's a little side note, because Butterworth went there about God as life, and he wrote about God and healing. That's a big thing in Unity, healing. And that's I need to put that on my list of topics. Here's what Butterworth wrote. God doesn't heal. Anybody ever prayed for God to heal you or someone you know or love? Well, fasten your seatbelts just for a second. God doesn't heal because it is the allness of life. Healing is the experience of leaving the darkness, coming into the light, leaving the confusion of human consciousness, and coming into allness. He goes on to say, God does not put illness into anyone, and God does not take away illness, dis-ease from anyone. There is nowhere to go for healing. Wherever we are, the allness, the wholeness, the life, the divine blueprint is always present. Can we always see it? My experience is no, not every day, not all the time. Do I know that it is ever present and always available? Yes. So that's a little side note for us to tuck into our meditation time this week. There's nowhere to go for healing. The allness is always present. Let's talk about God as love. Does that one feel a little warmer and fuzzier than maybe law or principle? God as love is, Fillmore wrote that God as love is the unifying principle. It is the mighty magnet that brings all living beings into oneness. Divine love loves for the sake of loving. And when we identify with God as love, can't you like viscerally get the oneness? It's like, here we are. We were born out of the same heart, and our paths crossed. And we affected and impact and made a handprint on each other's heart. Like, it doesn't get any better than that, does it? When we're in that moment. And we see it, and we feel it, and we know that we know it. That is God as love. And then there's mind, and I must admit this is one of my go-to relationships with spirit. Divine mind, God mind, capital M, is the unchanging, unlimited source of all existence. It's the, God as mind is, in metaphysics, we call it first cause. Like God is the initiator, the creator of it. And divine mind is the realm of all divine ideas, available to everyone, all of us, all the time. And I love it because Fillmore, he started a practice after, of course, Murdy demonstrated what God is and how to bring ourselves into wholeness. Fillmore's like, I want to know how this stuff works. So he sat in the silence for an hour every evening. So he calls the mind the connecting link between God and humankind. I think of it as the portal. So mind, our human mind, is contained within divine mind, God mind. So we have law, life. I know you all can walk out of here and repeat these definitions like that. We have law, life, love, mind, principle. So God isn't a person, but God is a principle. It's definite. This one is, excuse me, this one is in my mind very similar to law. God is law. Principle is definite, exact, unchangeable, and it's the one underlying cause. And Murdy wrote in her book, How to Let God Help You, God is it, neither male nor female, but principle. And this is a woman that came out of a really solid Methodist background and knew God as Father. And she said, God is it. God is not a cold principle like that of mathematics, but God is the principle of life, love, and wisdom. Source, we all know source, right? The underlying cause of all that is. I have a little story to share on my drive down here the other day. I was just past the halfway point. It's a 5-hour drive, and it was very frigid that day. And I have my chow-chow with me in the back of the car, so we stop at the halfway point so we can stretch our legs and get some air. I get us all loaded back into the car, and I'm on I-35, and I look over in the passenger seat, and I thought, where is my gray satchel? And then I had a sudden image of my gray satchel sitting on the library table in the den. Now this is only important because in my gray satchel is my wallet, my debit card, my credit card, my cash, and my driver's license. So my gut started churning, and I consternated for a moment. I texted, verbal text, both hands on the wheel. I texted Rev Erin, and I'm like, oh, I left my satchel at home, so I don't have, money. Can you front me this week, and then I'll pay you back? So I'm driving along. It's probably another half hour, 45 minutes, and my phone rings. It's Erin, and I push answer, and the first thing Erin says is, how is your gas? I kid you not. The instant that Reverend Erin asked me that question, my low fuel light dinged on. Now, I've been making this trip down here once a month since Georgia was born. I'm her fairy godmother. So 5 years I've been making this trip, and always make it on one tank of gas. I had not, when I realized I had no money, like, okay, so I'll get money from Erin when I get there. Erin says, how's your gas? My low fuel light comes on, and I push the button for range. How many miles do I have left? Guess how many? 15! On I-35 in the middle of nowhere in the sticks. Oh, now I'm having palpitations. My stomach is really churning. And we talked for a second, and I said, I'm going to hang up so I can focus on finding a gas station. So what's the first thing I do? I mean, first thing I do is physical reaction, gut churning, heart palpitations. I can drive for 15 more miles. And Erin says, where are you? And I'm like, I'm past Bethany, and I'm not to any of the towns outside of KC yet. I'm in the sticks. So I drive for 10 more miles, and I spot a gas station. I pull up to the pump. I go into the station, and I stepped up to the counter and rather breathlessly said to this tall, slender, very red-headed young man, I have an emergency. And he got this look of concern on his face. He said, what is it? And I said, I am driving down from Iowa and just recently realized that I don't have my satchel with me, so I have no money. I have no debit card or credit card or cash. And my gas tank tells me that I have 5 more miles to go. And he nodded, looked out the window, and said, what pump are you on? And I said, pump 3. You know, I got to go Trinity, right? Mind, idea, expression. So I was on pump 3. He walked over to another machine and did something, and he came back with a little white slip, and he said, here's $20 of gas for you. And I couldn't speak, and I put my hand on my heart, and I said, thank you so, so much. I had imagined all sorts of scenarios, like trying to call Bill Graham, my spouse, and I said to the young man, I said, we could call my husband and he could give us, the card information, or I said we could call my friend that's in Kansas City and get her information. And he went over to this machine and came back with the slip. So I went out and I put this $20 worth of gas in my car and drove down the road. And my husband mailed me my wallet, so not to worry. If you need money, I have it. God as source, yes? So here's what I did. On the road, in the sticks, 15 miles left, I prayed. And this was my prayer, almost verbatim. And I kept my eyes open because I was driving. I know that Spirit is in the midst. I know Spirit is source. I know that this situation is going to work out somehow, some way, and I trust that. Spirit is in the midst. I know that this will work out. I know God is source. I know I am protected. And I prayed that for the next 10 miles. And look at my guy. I didn't get his name, but I took a picture of the front of the station so that I can send him the money for the gas and send him my gratitude money. So I prayed. Would I have done that, 10 years ago, probably 15, 20 years ago, maybe. But it was my first response. And it was going into the space of Spirit is source. Remember that one. Spirit is source. So let's talk about God as Spirit. We have to drop the thought that God has any of the limitations that we have as people. Spirit is the activity, it's the movement of divine mind, of source, of substance living as us. So spirit is, in my mind, it's always the activity of God. Spirit is moving as me in this relative world. Substance is this. It's that stuff between your thumb and your fingers, and it is the living energy out of which everything comes. It is the primordial soup. It is the darkness. It is the chaos. It is God as substance, the energy out of which everything is made. So we have law, life, love, mind, principle, source, spirit, substance. How do we experience that? Any of that, all of that? Anybody experience that through prayer? No? Yes? Couple? Anybody experience that through just a communing process, that intention of hooking into it and connecting with it? How do we experience that? Is the $64,000 question. In the metaphysics text, it says, some would say it's impossible to know all there is to know about God. I would agree with that statement. How could I know everything there is to know about God? It's important to realize that we can't fully define it. And if you've read much Charles Fillmore, in almost every book, he talks about the impossibility of defining God, and then he goes on to make an attempt at that, which used to irritate me. It's like, can't we just leave it at that it's impossible to define? And Butterworth says this little golden gem: the only way I can know God, fill in the blank, the only way I can know God is to know myself. Isaiah just popped into my mind. Oh Lord, create in me a pure heart. The only way I can know God is to know myself and to find the depth of myself. And Butterworth asks, are we seeking a realization of God, what I would say an experience of God, or are we trying to reach God to get something through it? No, I've never done that in my life. Please God, that Mercedes, whatever Mercedes I used to pine after 35 years ago. And then Borg wrote, as long as we're clinging to a God who can give us anything, even good, we've not yet arrived at the understanding of the true nature of God. I love that smile. We've not yet arrived at the understanding of true nature. God has nothing to give us. Get it? God has nothing to give us. Not more faith, not more wisdom, not more guidance, not more understanding, not more health, not more money. God has nothing to give us because everything that God is, law, life, love, mind, principle, source, spirit, substance, everything that God is, we already are. So as we roll into conclusion on this, I quote our dear May Rowland. I don't know if that name is familiar to all of us. She was the head of Silent Unity Prayer Ministry for something crazy like 50 or 70 years. And she wrote, there are many names for God. And every person should use the name which means the most to them. Use the name that means the most. The name that makes them feel closest to God. The name that brings them the clearest concept of God. So as we prepare this morning for our time of meditation, I leave you with this thought from Marcus Borg. If we could live with but one question in our mind, what is God? Meditating day and night on that question, ultimately, God itself would reveal to us. We would have to do this with a mind completely free of all concepts of God, which is why I invited us to suspend our beliefs for a moment. So we would have to do this with a mind completely free of all concepts of God and begin as if we were completely alone with God, with Spirit, with Source. Get comfortable in our seats, leaning into the wonderful truth that we are divinely supported, that we are being held in this moment by divine love. What is God? In our meditation time this morning and in the coming days this week, I invite you to just gently bring that question into the silence. Nothing to work out, nothing to define, nothing that we have to look for the right answer. What is God? Because when we can allow that question to float in our consciousness, when we can allow it to float, mind, body, spirit, when we can allow it to permeate every level of our being, we become that which we seek. How beautiful. What is God? What is my evolving image, concept, thought, picture? What is my evolving name? Where is God for me? Where is Source? Where is divine love? Where is substance? Oh my gosh, I'm swimming in it. I forgot for just a second. What is God? God is. I am. And that's the truth. So it is, and so we let it be.